They told me I was not memorable enough to be the face of my own company. 6 months later, I destroyed them so completely that they begged me to remember their names. The betrayal hit me like a freight train on a Tuesday morning that started like any other. I was sitting in the conference room of what I thought was my company, staring at legal documents that would rip my life apart. The irony was not lost on me. I had helped write the very clause they were using to execute me. We had started this company on my living room floor. Empty ramen bowls scattered around us like casualties of war. My hands shaking from too much caffeine and too little sleep. But it was my idea. My algorithm. My obsession with making artificial intelligence smarter for accessibility. My vision that would change how disabled people interacted with technology forever. I remember those early days with painful clarity now. Axel Hartwell and Luna Chun, my so-called co-founders, had been nothing more than eager followers back then. They hung on my every word as I explained the intricate details of machine learning models that could adapt to individual accessibility needs in real time. They nodded enthusiastically when I showed them the breakthrough code that would revolutionize assistive technology. But somewhere between the seed funding hitting our bank account and the first TechCrunch article mentioning our names, something shifted. The way they talked about our company started to feel different. The emphasis gradually moved from our to theirs, and I found myself being pushed further into the shadows. At first, I did not mind being in the background. I genuinely preferred coding to schmoozing with investors. I would rather spend my nights perfecting algorithms than attending networking events where people measured success by the shininess of their business cards. I thought my co-founders understood this about me. I thought they respected it. But they mistook my quiet dedication for weakness. They interpreted my preference for substance over style as dispensability. And that was their first mistake. Investors are getting nervous. Axel said that Tuesday morning, his tech bro smugness radiating across the conference table like toxic fumes. His perfectly styled hair and expensive button-down shirt screamed, "Startup founder," in a way that made my stomach turn. You are not exactly a face people remember. Luna sat beside him, her fake pity smile stretched across her face like a mask. She had always been good at playing the sympathetic friend while sliding the knife between your ribs. We all know how brilliant you are, she said, her voice dripping with condescension. But this is about optics. About what investors want to see when they look at our leadership team. Translation. I was not shiny enough. Not flashy. Not marketable. I was just the architect who had built their dreams from nothing. The documents they slid across the table felt like ice against my fingertips. Legal jargon that essentially boiled down to, "You are out. We are keeping everything you built. Thank you for your service." They had orchestrated this perfectly. A month before our series of funding round, when my removal would cause the least disruption to their precious investor relations. They had calculated the exact moment when my departure would be most beneficial to them, and most devastating to me. I sat there for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, reading through the terms of my own execution. They were offering me a small equity stake. A pathetic consolation prize that insulted everything I had sacrificed for this company. They were keeping the technology one had developed. They were keeping the patents I had filed. They were keeping the future I had imagined. This cannot be legal, I whispered, but even as the words left my mouth, I knew they were wrong. Everything was perfectly legal. I had been so naive, so trusting, that I had helped them build the very weapon they were now using against me. We are really sorry it has to be this way, Luna said, and I could see she was actually enjoying this moment. The quiet girl she had befriended was finally being put in her place. But we have to think about what is best for the company. What was best for their company? The company that had been mine just moments before. I did not cry. I refused to give them that satisfaction. Instead, I picked up the pen with steady hands and signed my name on every page that required it. Each signature felt like a small death, but I maintained my composure until the very end. Then I stood up, gathered my few personal belongings from the office that had been my second home for 2 years, and walked out of that building for what I thought would be the last time. But I walked out with something they had not taken, could not take, would never be able to take. My vision. My understanding of what this technology could become. my ability to build something even better. The next few months were the darkest of my professional life. I watched from the sidelines as Axel and Luna basked in the glory of what we had built together. They gave interviews to tech magazines, speaking eloquently about their revolutionary accessibility platform. They attended conferences where they were praised as innovative young entrepreneurs changing the world for disabled people. They never mentioned my name. I spent those months in a small apartment across town, living off my savings and diving deeper into artificial intelligence research than I had ever gone before. I studied every advancement in machine learning, every breakthrough in neural networks, every innovation in adaptive algorithms. I was not just learning, I was evolving. And then I discovered MindSpring Technologies. MindSpring was everything my former company was not. They were principled. They were genuine. They actually cared about the people their technology would serve, not just the investors their pitch decks would impress. But they were struggling. Their product was solid but outdated. Their algorithms were functional but slow. Their vision was admirable but limited by technical constraints. They did not need branding advice or investor relations coaching. They needed better technology. They needed someone who understood the intricate balance between innovation and accessibility. They needed me. I reached out to their CEO, Marcus Rivera, with a simple proposition. Let me help you build something revolutionary. I did not mention my history with Axel and Luna. I did not talk about revenge or competition. I simply showed him what I could do. The algorithm I demonstrated to Marcus that day made our old technology look like a calculator compared to a supercomputer. Real-time adaptation, predictive accessibility features, seamless integration across multiple platforms. Everything I had dreamed of building but had never been allowed to fully realize. Marcus hired me as a consultant within a week. Within 2 months, I was their chief technology officer. Within 6 months, I had quietly become an investor in the company. And within a year, I owned the controlling stake in MindSpring Technologies. The transformation was remarkable. We overhauled their entire product line from the ground up. The algorithm I had once built for Axel and Luna became the foundation for something infinitely better. Faster processing, smarter predictions, more intuitive user interfaces. And this time it was entirely mine. I assembled a team of the most talented engineers I could find. We worked 18-hour days, fueled by pizza and the shared vision of creating something truly revolutionary. But unlike my previous startup experience, I made sure every team member understood their value. I made sure everyone knew their contributions mattered. I made sure no one would ever feel dispensable. The breakthrough came on a Thursday night in March. Our new accessibility AI had achieved something that industry experts said was impossible. Real-time adaptation to user needs with zero configuration required. The system could instantly understand how each individual user interacted with technology and automatically adjust every interface element to optimize their experience. It was beautiful. It was elegant. It was everything I had ever dreamed of building. And it was about to destroy everything Axel and Luna thought they had built. When news leaked that my former startup was planning a major product launch, their attempt to finally deliver on the promises I had helped them make 2 years earlier, I knew it was time to strike. We launched our product exactly 1 month before their scheduled announcement. The demo video we released on a Monday morning broke the internet. Technology reviewers called it revolutionary. Disability rights advocates praised it as life-changing. Investors described it as the future of human-computer interaction. Within 48 hours, our video had been viewed over 2 million times. Within a week, we had received inquiries from every major technology company in Silicon Valley. Within 2 weeks, we had secured partnerships that my former co-founders had been chasing for years. But the most satisfying moment came when I received a phone call from their head of engineering, Jamie Chen. No relation to Luna despite the shared surname. "I have been following what you are building at MindSpring," Jamie said during our conversation. "What you have accomplished is exactly what we have been trying to create here, but your implementation is years ahead of anything we have developed." I listened as Jamie explained the frustrations of working under Axel and Luna's leadership. How technical decisions were made based on what sounded good to investors rather than what actually worked for users. How the original vision, My vision had been diluted and compromised until it was barely recognizable. Would you be interested in joining our team? I asked, already knowing the answer. Jamie was the first. But word spreads quickly in the tight-knit world of artificial intelligence engineering. Within 3 weeks, I had received calls from every single member of my former company's technical team. Every single one except Axel and Luna, of course. They were too busy giving interviews about their upcoming product launch to notice that their entire engineering department was quietly interviewing with their biggest competitor. The exodus was swift and decisive. In the span of 2 weeks, 12 engineers, 4 data scientists, 2 product managers, and 1 technical writer handed in their resignations and accepted positions at Mindspring Technologies. They did not just bring their skills. They brought insider knowledge of every project, every deadline, every technical limitation that my former company was struggling to overcome. They brought understanding of every promise Axel and Luna had made to investors, and every reason why those promises could never be kept. The cherry on top was when their lead investor, Patricia Yamamoto from Crest Venture Partners, reached out to me directly. "I understand you have built something remarkable at Mindspring," she said during our phone conversation. "I would like to discuss moving our investment from your former company to yours." Patricia had done her research. She knew exactly who I was and what I had built. She understood that Axel and Luna were nothing more than pretty faces selling technology they could never truly comprehend or improve. "Their product launch has been delayed indefinitely," she explained. "Without their engineering team, they simply do not have the technical capability to deliver what they have promised. Meanwhile, you have already delivered something better than anything they ever claimed they could build." The meeting with Patricia led to introductions with 5 other major investors. Each conversation followed the same pattern. Initial skepticism about my ability to compete with a more established startup, followed by absolute amazement when they saw what we had actually built, followed by immediate interest in moving their money to the company that could actually deliver results. Within 6 months of my former company's failed product launch, Mindspring Technologies had secured $28 million in Series B funding. We had partnerships with Microsoft, Google, and Apple. We had government contracts to improve accessibility in public services. We had international deals to bring our technology to disabled communities around the world. And my former company had ceased to exist. The phone call from Axel came on a Wednesday afternoon. I almost did not answer when I saw his name on my screen, but curiosity got the better of me. "What the hell did you do?" His voice was shaking like he had seen a ghost, like he could not believe the nightmare his life had become. I leaned back in my chair, the CEO chair in the corner office of Mindspring's new headquarters, and smiled at my computer screen showing our stock price climbing steadily upward. "I improved," I said, letting each word hang in the air like a blade. "You remember that word, right? I was always good at that." The silence on the other end of the line stretched for so long that I wondered if he had hung up. When he finally spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. "This cannot be legal. You stole our entire team. You copied our technology. You destroyed our company." I laughed. Actually laughed out loud at the absurdity of his accusations. I hired talented engineers who wanted to work on meaningful projects. I corrected him. I built better technology using my own innovations and research. And I did not destroy your company. I simply built a better one. "You planned this," he said, and I could hear Luna's voice in the background, probably coaching him on what to say. "This was all revenge for what happened 2 years ago." Revenge. I repeated the word like it was foreign to my tongue. "Axel, this was not revenge. Revenge would have been personal. Revenge would have been emotional. This was business. This was simply what happens when you underestimate the person who actually built everything you thought you owned." I could hear him breathing heavily on the other end of the line, probably realizing that every legal document they had used to remove me from our original company was now completely worthless. They owned the rights to outdated technology that had been surpassed by innovations they could never understand or replicate. "We made you." Luna's voice came through the phone as she apparently grabbed it from Axel. "You would be nothing without us. We gave you the opportunity to build something meaningful." "You gave me the opportunity?" I repeated, my voice getting dangerously quiet. "Luna, I gave you the opportunity. I brought you into MY Vision. I shared MY innovations with you. I trusted you with MY Life's work. And you repaid that trust by stealing everything I had built and telling me I was not memorable enough to be part of it. That is not how it happened, she protested, but her voice lacked conviction. That is exactly how it happened, I said. And now you get to live with the consequences of treating the architect of your dreams like she was disposable. I hung up the phone and immediately blocked both of their numbers. I had no interest in hearing their excuses or their desperate attempts to blame me for their failures. The final chapter of this story played out on the biggest stage possible, the TED conference in Vancouver. Standing on that red circle, looking out at an audience of 2,000 of the world's most influential technology leaders, I told my story. Not the sanitized version that corporate communications teams usually craft, but the real story. The story of betrayal and resilience. The story of being underestimated and fighting back. The story of building something better from the ashes of broken trust. They told me I was not memorable enough to represent the company I had founded. I said, my voice carrying clearly through the auditorium. They said investors wanted to see different faces when they looked at our leadership team. They were probably right about that. I paused, letting the silence build tension in the room. But they made one critical error in their calculations. They assumed that being memorable and being brilliant were the same thing. They assumed that being marketable and being innovative were equivalent. They assumed that the person who built their technology could be replaced by people who could simply talk about it more attractively. The audience was completely silent, hanging on every word. Let them underestimate you, I continued, making eye contact with young women scattered throughout the audience. Let them replace you. Let them think they can do better without you. And then build something so much better than what they took from you that they spend the rest of their careers trying to catch up to where you started. The standing ovation lasted for 3 full minutes. After my talk, I was surrounded by investors, entrepreneurs, and fellow technologists who wanted to congratulate me on both my technical achievements and my business strategy. But the conversation that meant the most to me came from Patricia Yamamoto, the investor who had moved her funding from my former company to Mindspring. You know, she said as we stood in the lobby of the conference center, when I first invested in your original startup, I always suspected that you were the real genius behind the technology. Axel and Luna were impressive speakers, but they never demonstrated the deep technical understanding that I saw in your early presentations. Why did you not say anything at the time? I asked. Patricia smiled ruefully. Because I made the same mistake they did. I assumed that the person doing the talking was the person making the decisions. I assumed that leadership meant being the most visible person in the room. I learned better, obviously, but not before making some very expensive mistakes. Expensive for whom? I asked. For my fund initially, she admitted. But much more expensive for Axel and Luna in the long run. They could have spent their careers working alongside one of the most innovative AI researchers of their generation. Instead, they chose to compete against you. And as we have all seen, that was not a competition they were equipped to win. As I flew home from Vancouver that night, I reflected on the journey that had brought me to this point. 2 years earlier, I had been a disposable co-founder whose contributions were valued less than her co-founder's presentation skills. Now I was the CEO of a company valued at over $200 million, leading a team of 37 brilliant engineers and researchers, holding patents on technology that would shape the future of human-computer interaction for decades to come. But more importantly than the financial success or professional recognition, I had proven something that I needed to prove to myself. That excellence cannot be faked, innovation cannot be stolen, and vision cannot be replaced by marketing. Axel and Luna had thought they could take my life's work and wear it like a costume. They thought they could reduce me to a footnote in the story of their success. They thought they could make me disappear. Instead, they had given me the greatest gift possible. The motivation to build something so much better than what we had created together that our original startup looked like a rough draft in comparison. 6 months after the TED Talk, Mindspring Technologies announced our acquisition of 3 smaller AI companies and our expansion into international markets. We had become not just a success story, but a dominant force in accessible technology development. And somewhere in Silicon Valley, two former co-founders were probably still trying to figure out how the quiet girl they had underestimated had managed to build an empire, while they were left with nothing but the memory of what they had thrown away. I had learned that revenge, when built with clean code and solid equity, does not taste bitter at all. It tastes like justice. It tastes like proving that the person they called unmemorable had become impossible to ignore. It tastes like the future I had always envisioned, finally built exactly the way I had dreamed it should be. And that is how I transformed betrayal into billions, underestimation into innovation, and disposal into dominance. They had kicked me out of the startup I co-founded. So I built something better and hired their entire team to help me do it. The best revenge is not just success. It is building something so extraordinary that your enemies spend the rest of their lives wondering what they could have accomplished if they had been smart enough to stand beside you instead of trying to stand on top of you. If this story of turning betrayal into breakthrough inspired you, please subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories of resilience, innovation, and ultimate triumph. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another amazing tale of underdogs who refuse to stay down.